Now that we've got Oracle VirtualBox installed to allow us to create our own virtual machines, let's begin with our very first virtual machine, the Kali Linux VM. So we're going to download and run an already pre-made virtual machine for VirtualBox from Kali Linux. You can also run this straight from an ISO or a DVD image file, but we're going to go to kali.org and we're going to see how to download a VirtualBox already made for us. So in your browser, go to kali.org, that's Kali.org, and then come to Downloads, download Kali Linux. And you will see we can download ISO files so that we can burn these to a DVD and install them in a physical machine. You can also install from an ISO into a virtual machine. You can put an ISO file in as a virtual disk and it will run just like it would from a real CD. But if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll find Kali Virtual Images. So we can use some pre-made VMware or VirtualBox images. If you're running VMware, you would download one of these. We're running on VirtualBox, so we'll download a Kali Linux VirtualBox image. And you'll usually be okay with a 64-bit image. If you're having any trouble with 64-bit VMs, you can go to a 32-bit. If you're running on Windows, you may have to go into your BIOS and turn on your Hyper-V or AMD virtualization, Intel virtualization VTX or AMD V. That's the virtualization technology. If there's a virtualization entry in your BIOS, you may have to turn that on if you run into errors with 64-bit images. Well, let's try a 64-bit image. That's only on Windows that you might have the trouble. I'm on Mac, so I know this is going to work, and most Windows computers will be able to run just fine with the 64-bit VBox, but you can always default back to 32-bit if you have any trouble. So we'll download that. It may take just a few minutes to download. Once the Kali VirtualBox finishes downloading, we're going to double-click it to run it because we've already got Oracle VirtualBox installed. So when we run this, it will come up with the import a virtual appliance. Notice it calls it Kali Linux. It's got some information about it, the CPU, the amount of RAM. About 2 gig is okay for these Linux computers. And we can see everything about it. We're just going to hit import. And depending on the speed of your computer, it may take a couple of minutes to set up the VirtualBox image, but we'll let this run all the way through. Oh, one quick note, when you start this Kali VirtualBox, you may run into an error the very first time you run this, saying that it's got a USB 2.0 error. We can install the Oracle VirtualBox extension pack if we need to a little later on, but for right now, all we need to do is scroll down to USB. We'll double-click that and just change this back to USB 1.1 and hit OK. There we go. And now if we start this VirtualBox machine, you're going to see it's going to look just like starting a real computer. We're going to start it up in Kali Linux. And we can turn off those comments. And we're booted up into Kali Linux. We're going to use the username root and the password tour, T-O-O-R. Root backwards is usually the password for most installations of Kali Linux, so we sign in. Whenever you download a VirtualBox from another location like we've done, you can usually find in the description the username and password. We can see those are here, root and tour. And if you like, you can make this full screen. And notice it'll tell you in VirtualBox, if you switch to host screen, full screen, it'll tell you that your left control or your left command key plus F will switch you back and forth. I'm going to tell it not to show that message again. Just remember that we'll do that left key and F when we want to switch back from full screen. And we can do the same thing to go back to full screen. When we have a set of applications in Kali Linux, we are running a real Kali Linux computer. So you can see we've got wireless attacks, reverse engineering tools, vulnerability analysis. We've got sniffing and spoofing, post-exploits forensics. So we can do memory forensics and look into a computer. So we've got lots of really great tools for forensics, for ethical hacking, for vulnerability testing, and we're going to learn how to use those in the next section. But up next, we're going to set up a Windows machine so that we can do a little bit of work from Kali into Linux. So you can host F, or your left control or left command key F. And now we can go to the virtual machine and we can pause this Kali Linux box. Just press pause. And then when we shut it, we'll tell it to save the machine state. And we'll usually do that. We don't always have to power off the machine. We can just save the machine state for most of these, and it will boot right back up where we see it right there. It's just like doing a sleep on the machine instead of a full shutdown. So we've got our Kali Linux box. Let's learn how to add our Windows box next.